Activity, we're going to be looking at the literacy portion, and we're using the standard 2.ga.a.1. And we're recognizing and drawing shapes that have specified attributes such as number of angles, number of sides, and we're looking at triangles, quadrilaterals, pentagons, and hexagons. So really we're looking at like how a square has 4 sides and 4 angles. We're not so much looking at the degrees of angles or if they're all equal, obtuse, acute, things like that. The students can obviously talk about that if it's been discussed in class, but we're mainly focusing on the sensible attributes that they would know at this standard in this grade level. So we're using the book Color Zoo by Lois Ehlert, and this is where the students, before we even do the read aloud, the students are going to use the virtual manipulative pattern blocks, and they're going to create their own drawing on the computer, copy their drawing onto a piece of paper where they will just hand draw what they've done, and then they could also, if they have their own personal Chromebooks, save it into a document if they would like to keep it in the unit, and then they can also list the shapes they've used. And then once the students are all done, we'll just get up and do a really quick gallery walk where everyone walks around and sees what each student has drawn, and then students can, once they sit back down, have a quick class discussion about what they drew, why they drew it, how the shapes play together, and what shapes they used, and they can list the attributes of the shapes. So here's an example of what I did, and this is what it also looks like. So considering the Christmas spirit, I just used the triangles and shaped them together, and then I included some rhombuses and used that to formulate that, and then I made a star out of the diamonds, and then the tree stand was a trapezoid. So this is something that the students can create, which plays into the use of Color Zoo. And so we'll do the read aloud, and once the teacher does the read aloud once, then they will read through it again, and this time each shape is looked at or called. The teacher will pull out the physical block that they have, where if she might have a square that she made out of Play-Doh or just like a piece of paper cut out into cardboard, she can show a square like that, and she can have one for every single shape that is used. And so it starts off with tiger and mouse and fox, and where the eyes are the circles and the triangles could be the nose and everything like that. And then once you get to the end of those 3 characters, then you see what shapes were used to create those 3 characters. So it plays along with how shapes are used in the real world, looking at the context and what students will recognize. So they'll read through that, and then the second time the teacher will pull out the shapes as they come along and name them, and the students will just jot down notes and little drawings on a piece of paper to recognize that the square, triangle, and circle went with the tiger, mouse, and fox, and then so on for the next activity. And this uses like ovals and hearts, but that's not a part of the standard, so it's just a little fun thing that the students can do for extra points or to look at how shapes play along. And then this is the link to the read aloud. And then we will look at the first part of the activity. So the first part of the activity will be done in 3 groups. So you'll just split the whole class. So if you have 21 students in a class, you'll have 3 groups of 7. If you have 24 students in a class, you'll have 8 groups of 3, or 3 groups of 8, sorry. And I mainly focused on 3 groups of 7 with this one, just to kind of show how this would be done. And this particular this particular activity, we're looking at no COVID. So the class will be split up evenly, and the desks will need to be moved to the side. So if I had like a whiteboard here, my teacher desk here, we had the carpeted area, the desks would be moved off to the side so they're not in the way, and the students would group up. And then the teacher would call out a shape that would need to be made out of the animal. So for instance, they would all link hands to form a circle for the eye of the tiger, just like is done here. The teacher would say, please form the eye of the tiger, and then the students would link up and make a circle with their bodies. And then this will be included with some competition or incentive, and so the first group to make up the circle will get a piece of candy. And then that'll go on for like the triangle with the nose until so on and so forth, until the students have so the teacher decides that the students have gotten the idea of what's going to work and what's not going to work, and if the students have played along with the activity. And so we're going to look at the geoboard for the next part using this manipulative. And this is going to be a lot of fun, but the students will first move back you'll move the desks back into groups. So we're just going to keep them in their groups, but this is an individual part where they will just use computers. And so the students will move back to their desks, and then they will pull up their Geoboard manipulative. And so, for instance, the teacher will read out a certain riddle. So for this one, I say, I have 4 equal sides that wish to be drawn. My angles are right where they belong. And so then the students would use those hints to create a square. And once enough time has been allotted, the teacher will then call on students to explain what they think the shape is and why, using attributes and evidence to back up what they have learned from the previous used activities and just what they know off of the top of their head. So they're using the Geoboard for this quick part of the activity. And then we're going to look at the third and final part of the activity, where we will also use the spinner. So we'll use this spinner, and they will remain in their groups, but we'll only use the spinner 3 through 10, those numbers. And once a number is taken, that number cannot be reused. So each student is responsible for their shape. And so if the virtual manipulative spinner lands on 3, then the student would know that they have a triangle, and that is the shape that they are dedicating their short narrative to. And so they will talk about the attributes that come along with that shape, the sides of that shape, and then they can give a short little fun thing of like where you find triangle shapes or what the triangle is feeling. So we have the shape diaries here. And so we have a triangle. So we have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then in the standard, it doesn't focus. It focuses on the normal, like triangle, square, pentagon, hexagon, octagon. But with the 7, 9, and 10, like a decagon, that's obviously not focused on in the standard. But it gives the students a little more creative room and opportunity to recognize that attributes of shapes are closed and that they have certain numbers of sides and don't always look the same. And then the students are also going to stay at their desks for this group. And then once the groups are done, they will put their booklet together. So that will be a lot of fun. And then the teacher will make copies, so each student has like a booklet to take home. So that will be a deliverable that they have. And with the Geoboard, the students who get the most amount correct, or they like to share what they got with their riddle, they will get points for their team. So then when it comes time, the students can can choose the sides that they want to use first, or they will get to spin first in their group. So that will be a lot of fun for them to use. And then this is just the virtual manipulative spinner. So we won't focus on 1 and 2, which would work out if you had 7. And so then you would have 1 on 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then if you have 8 or more, a student or 2 students could both work on one together if you wanted to collaborate, or 2 students could do squares, or 2 students could land on one number. And then the group work keeps the students engaged, but they will add a competition, like I said. So the first part of the activity will be time to get in those circles or squares or triangles, and then there will be multiple shapes called so that each team can have an opportunity to win. And then the riddles of the shapes are a good way to keep the students thinking and elicit their mathematical thoughts and like why it looks a certain way or why these attributes relate to the certain shape. And then the final task is also a competition where the students will anonymously vote on which overall booklet they like the best. And the group's booklet that they like the best with the most votes will receive a pizza party or a candy or whatever they would like to use.